What if the same brain glitch that makes it hard to focus is also what keeps you anxious all the time? You're sitting there trying to get something done, but your brain just won't stay on track. You open 5 tabs, start 3 projects, and before you know it, your mind is spinning with what-ifs and unfinished thoughts. And it's not because you're lazy or broken, it's because your brain is caught in a tug-of-war between 2 systems that can't quite sync. For many people, ADHD and anxiety aren't 2 separate problems. They're 2 sides of the same dysregulated brain network. One part of your brain is craving stimulation, it's underactive, especially in areas that rely on dopamine, like the prefrontal cortex. That's the part that helps you plan, stay motivated, and follow through. But when that system is quiet, your brain feels flat, bored, or restless, so it looks for something to wake it up. At the same time, your brain's alert system, the amygdala and the limbic network, starts to compensate. It ramps up, scanning for danger, pushing you into constant motion, overthinking, or worry. It's like pressing the gas and the brakes at the same time. You end up feeling scattered, overwhelmed, and tense. This isn't a moral flaw or a lack of willpower. It's a pattern your nervous system learned to survive, to keep you alert when you felt unsafe, and to chase stimulation when life felt dull. But here's the good news. That pattern isn't permanent. The brain can rewire. So in this video, we'll explore the core neurological glitch that drives both ADHD and anxiety, and how to calm that tug of war so your brain can finally rest and focus again. Do you notice that your ADHD symptoms get worse when you're anxious? Share your experience in the comments below. Imagine your brain like a car engine revving in neutral. The RPMs are screaming, the gas pedal is down, but the wheels aren't moving. That's what it feels like to live with ADHD and anxiety at the same time. On the surface, they seem like opposites. ADHD feels under-focused and scattered, while anxiety feels over-focused and worried. But underneath, they're both driven by the same kind of neurological glitch, a brain that's running too hot in some areas and too cold in others. In ADHD, one of the core issues is low dopamine activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that helps you regulate attention, control impulses, and make decisions. Dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it's about motivation and focus. It's the brain's go signal. When dopamine levels are low, it's like trying to drive with an empty tank. You push the pedal, but there's no fuel to get you moving. You might crave stimulation, checking your phone, starting new projects, chasing novelty, because your brain is trying to generate its own dopamine boost just to feel normal. Now add anxiety to that mix. When the prefrontal cortex is under-stimulated, another system, the limbic network, especially the amygdala, steps in to keep you alert. The amygdala's job is to detect threats and trigger the fight or flight response. When that system becomes overactive, your brain stays on high alert, scanning for danger even when you're safe. You might feel restless, tense, or stuck in loops of worry. It's your brain trying to protect you, but it's working too hard too often, so you end up with this paradox. Parts of your brain are sluggish, craving stimulation, while other parts are overfiring, flooding your system with adrenaline and cortisol. It's like your nervous system is pressing the gas and the brake at the same time. You can't relax, but you also can't move forward. This internal friction creates a sense of chaos, difficulty focusing, constant fidgeting, racing thoughts, and that low-grade hum of anxiety that never quite shuts off. This isn't just a mental pattern, it's physiological. When dopamine is low, the brain struggles to filter out irrelevant information. Every sound, every thought, every tiny stimulus competes for attention. At the same time, an overactive threat system interprets that sensory overload as potential danger. So your body stays tense, your breathing becomes shallow, and your heart rate rises. It's not that you want to worry, it's that your brain is wired to be ready all the time. And here's where the cycle becomes self-perpetuating. The more anxious you feel, the harder it becomes to focus. The harder it is to focus, the more anxious you feel. You start avoiding tasks that seem overwhelming, which triggers guilt or frustration, which then activates the threat response again. Over time, this trains your nervous system to associate focus and calm with danger, and distraction with temporary relief. So your brain learns that being busy or overstimulated feels safer than being still, even though that constant stimulation eventually burns you out. It's important to remember that this isn't your fault. This revving engine pattern often starts early in life, sometimes as a response to chronic stress or emotional unpredictability. When you grow up in an environment where you have to stay alert to feel safe, your brain adapts. It learns to stay hypervigilant, always scanning, always moving, because slowing down once felt risky. ADHD and anxiety are two expressions of that same adaptive wiring. One chases stimulation to stay awake, the other chases safety to stay alive. But the cost of living in that state is exhaustion. Your brain is brilliant at survival, but not always great at peace. The very circuits that once kept you safe are now keeping you stuck. Overstimulated, but unable to move forward, like that car revving endlessly in neutral. When you start to understand this hidden brain glitch, it changes everything. It's not that you lack focus or discipline, it's that your nervous system is trying to manage imbalance the only way it knows how. The goal isn't to force yourself to try harder, but to help your brain find regulation again, to bring the engine back into gear so you can move forward with calm, direction, and focus. When your brain runs low on dopamine, everything starts to feel like trying to drive uphill in second gear. You push, you tray, you want to move forward, but motivation sputters and stalls. This is one of the core experiences of ADHD, a brain that's not lazy, but under-stimulated. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that helps you feel engaged, rewarded, and ready to take action. It's what turns effort into satisfaction. When dopamine signaling is low, everyday tasks like answering an email or cleaning up can feel dull or meaningless. So your brain starts looking for something, anything, to wake it up. That's where the drive for stimulation comes in. The ADHD brain learns to chase novelty because novelty gives a temporary dopamine spike. New ideas, sudden changes, scrolling social media, snacking, or diving into a new project, all of these give your brain that quick hit of, finally, I can feel something. But the problem is that the relief is short-lived. When the stimulation fades, dopamine drops again, and the brain craves the next boost. Over time, that cycle trains you to stay in constant motion, always searching, never satisfied. And this constant chase doesn't just feed distraction, it fuels anxiety. Because when your brain becomes addicted to chasing stimulation, rest starts to feel unsafe. Stillness feels like boredom, and boredom feels unbearable. You might find yourself checking your phone when you're supposed to be relaxing, planning your next task before you finish the current one, or overthinking small decisions just to keep your mind occupied. Your nervous system has learned that being busy equals being okay, while slowing down triggers discomfort or even panic. This is where dopamine imbalance and anxiety intertwine. Anxiety isn't just a reaction to external stress. It's often a symptom of an internal chemical imbalance that makes calm feel threatening. When dopamine is low, your prefrontal cortex, the part that regulates thoughts and emotions, has less control over the limbic system. The amygdala, your brain's alarm center, becomes louder and more easily triggered. You start living in a constant low-grade fight or flight mode, and your body interprets any quiet moment as danger. The key to healing this isn't to suppress stimulation, but to balance it, to create rhythms that naturally regulate dopamine and help your brain learn what real calm feels like again. One of the most powerful ways to do that is through consistency. Dopamine loves rhythm. When your brain knows what to expect, it stops wasting energy scanning for surprises and starts focusing on reward prediction. That quiet satisfaction that builds motivation from within. Start with the basics. Sleep is the foundation of dopamine balance. When you're sleep deprived, your dopamine receptors downregulate, meaning your brain becomes less sensitive to pleasure and motivation. Prioritize regular sleep and waking times, even if you start with small shifts. Next, build structure into your day. Having predictable anchors like a morning routine, regular meals, or specific work hours helps the brain regulate its reward system. You don't have to schedule every minute, just give your brain clear signals about what's coming next. Movement is another natural dopamine regulator. Exercise releases dopamine and endorphins, but it also strengthens the brain circuits that control focus and emotional balance. Even 5 to 10 minutes of movement, a walk, stretching, dancing, cleaning, can reset your neurochemistry. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency. And perhaps most importantly, meaningful goals stabilize dopamine in a deeper way. When your brain connects effort to purpose, dopamine isn't just released in quick bursts, it flows steadily, reinforcing motivation over time. This could mean working toward a personal value, learning a skill you care about, or doing something kind for someone else. Purpose transforms dopamine from a chase into a steady stream. The more you repeat these habits, consistent sleep, structured days, daily movement, meaningful goals, the more your brain learns that stimulation can come from within, not just from external novelty. Each repetition strengthens the prefrontal cortex and calms the overactive limbic system. Over time, that rewires your brain's focus pathways, teaching your nervous system that calm and engagement can coexist. So instead of being trapped in a cycle of craving and anxiety, you start to experience focus that feels peaceful, motivation that feels sustainable, and rest that actually feels safe. This is how you begin to shift from a dopamine roller coaster to a dopamine rhythm, one that supports both clarity and calm instead of chaos and fatigue. Inside your brain, there's a constant negotiation happening between two major players, the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is like your body's internal alarm system. Its job is to detect threats and keep you safe. It reacts fast, long before you've had time to think. The prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, is the wise, thoughtful part of your brain that helps you pause, plan, focus, and regulate emotions. Ideally, these two systems work together. The amygdala signals when something might be dangerous, and the prefrontal cortex steps in to assess whether that alarm is valid or not. But when you have ADHD or anxiety, this balance gets disrupted, and the amygdala starts calling all the shots. In a calm, regulated brain, communication between these two regions is smooth and responsive. But in a dysregulated brain, especially one that's been exposed to chronic stress or inconsistent stimulation, the amygdala becomes overactive and the prefrontal cortex underperforms. That's what scientists call top-down regulation failure. It means your emotional brain is in the driver's seat while your logical brain struggles to steer. This is why people with ADHD and anxiety often describe feeling hijacked by their own emotions. They know they're overreacting, but they can't just think their way out of it. When the amygdala senses danger, whether it's a real threat or just the fear of failing a task, it floods your system with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate speeds up, your muscles tense, your focus narrows, and your body prepares for fight, flight, or freeze. That's useful if you're facing a wild animal, but not so much when you're just trying to finish a report or sit through a meeting. The problem is that once this alarm system activates, it pulls blood flow and resources away from the prefrontal cortex, the very area you need to stay calm, organized, and rational. So the more anxious you feel, the harder it becomes to think clearly. The harder it is to think clearly, the more anxious you become. This creates a feedback loop where attention is constantly hijacked by perceived threats. A text you haven't answered, a deadline you're dreading, a past mistake you can't stop replaying. The amygdala keeps shouting danger while the prefrontal cortex tries to whisper, it's okay, we're safe. And because the amygdala reacts faster and louder, it often wins the tug of war. That's why your brain can feel like it's spinning, flooded with energy, but unable to direct it productively. But the brain is adaptable. The connection between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex can be strengthened through practice by repeatedly calming the alarm system and re-engaging the rational mind. One of the simplest and most powerful ways to do that is through breath regulation. Slow, intentional breathing sends a direct signal to the vagus nerve, which tells the body that it's safe. When you take a long, steady exhale, your heart rate slows, cortisol drops, and blood flow returns to the prefrontal cortex. You don't have to force deep meditation. Even a few slow breaths while noticing your surroundings can start to shift your state. Labeling emotions is another tool that helps the prefrontal cortex regain control. When you put your feelings into words, I'm anxious, I feel overwhelmed, I'm afraid I'll mess this up, it activates language centers that sit right next to the prefrontal cortex. That act of naming begins to calm the emotional intensity because it transforms raw, chaotic emotion into something the thinking brain can understand. It's like translating the amygdala's alarm into a message the rest of your brain can process. Sensory grounding also helps pull you out of an amygdala spiral. When your attention is trapped in racing thoughts or body tension, use your senses to bring yourself back to the present moment. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. It sounds simple, but this practice reorients your brain from imagined danger to real-time safety. It literally shifts neural activity from the fear network back to sensory and prefrontal regions. Over time, every time you catch yourself in that tug of war and choose to breathe, name, or ground instead of react, you're strengthening the bridge between these two brain regions. The amygdala learns that not every surge of emotion is an emergency. The prefrontal cortex becomes more responsive and confident. With repetition, your brain's threat response starts to recalibrate, less alarmed, more balanced. This doesn't mean you'll never feel anxious or distracted again. It means your brain becomes better at returning to calm after it's activated. The more you practice these grounding tools, the faster you can interrupt the amygdala's alarm and re-engage the rational, focused part of your mind. And little by little, that's how the tug of war turns into teamwork, where both parts of your brain start working together to keep you safe, focused, and steady. When your brain is caught in survival mode, everything starts to feel urgent. Even small tasks can feel like threats. You might wake up already tense, scrolling through your phone for stimulation or reassurance before your feet even hit the ground. It's not because you lack motivation or discipline. It's because your nervous system has been stuck in a loop of overactivation for so long that it doesn't know what safety feels like anymore. The human nervous system is designed to keep us alive. When the brain detects danger, it activates the sympathetic branch, the fight or flight system. This floods the body with adrenaline and cortisol, sharpens your focus on potential threats, and pumps energy into your muscles so you can act fast. In short bursts, this is incredibly useful. But when that system never shuts off, when your brain perceives life itself as a constant threat, the stress response becomes your baseline. For people with ADHD and anxiety, this chronic overstimulation can feel like being trapped with the gas pedal pressed down and no brakes. The mind races, the body buzzes, and rest feels impossible. You might find yourself jumping from one distraction to another, not because you want to, but because stillness feels intolerable. This is what happens when the sympathetic nervous system is stuck on. The body is primed for survival, not focus or creativity. It's constantly scanning for danger, or when no danger is found, it searches for stimulation to fill the void. That same hypervigilance can show up as physical tension, tight shoulders, shallow breathing, a clenched jaw, or mental tension like repetitive thoughts, restlessness, or guilt for not doing enough. It's a feedback loop. Overstimulation activates the threat system. The threat system heightens anxiety, and anxiety drives you back into overstimulation to cope. You stay trapped in motion because movement feels safer than stillness. The way out of this loop isn't to push harder or think your way out of anxiety. It's to teach your nervous system how to shift into the parasympathetic state, what we call the rest and digest system. This is the state where your body feels safe enough to relax, repair, and focus. It's the foundation for calm, clarity, and attention. The more time your body spends here, the easier it becomes to regulate both mood and motivation. One of the most direct ways to activate this system is through your breath. The vagus nerve, a key part of the parasympathetic network, runs from your brainstem down through your chest and into your organs. When you slow your exhale, you stimulate this nerve, signaling to the brain that you're safe. Try breathing in through your nose for a count of 4, then exhaling slowly through your mouth for a count of 6 or 8. The longer exhale tells your body, we're not in danger. Over time, this retrains your brain to respond to calm as normal rather than threat as normal. Stretching and gentle movement also help reset the nervous system. When your body is locked in tension, slow, mindful motion tells your muscles and brain that they can release. You don't have to do intense exercise. Even rolling your shoulders, moving your neck, or doing a few minutes of yoga can help discharge built-up adrenaline. Pairing movement with breath amplifies the effect. Inhale as you open the body, exhale as you release. This rhythm communicates safety on a biological level. Another tool is the mindful pause, intentionally stopping for a moment throughout the day to check in with your body. Ask yourself, am I safe right now? Then notice your surroundings, the texture of what you're touching, the sounds around you, the support of the chair beneath you. These micro moments of awareness reorient your nervous system from hypervigilance to presence. They remind your brain that it can stand down, that you don't have to be on guard all the time. It's easy to think that calm will come once you're finally productive or caught up, that if you just finish your to-do list, you'll feel safe. But it's actually the other way around. Safety is what allows focus to emerge. When your nervous system feels protected, your brain stops wasting energy on scanning for danger. The prefrontal cortex can come back online, and suddenly attention and motivation flow naturally. Building this sense of safety isn't about forcing yourself to relax. It's about giving your body experiences of calm that it can trust. Every slow breath, every stretch, every pause is a signal to your nervous system, you're okay now. And the more often you send that message, the more your brain learns that it doesn't have to live in survival mode anymore. Over time, the loop that once kept you stuck starts to unwind, and you begin to experience what real rest and focus feel like, not because you earned them, but because your body finally believes it's safe enough to have them. Your brain is constantly changing. Every thought, emotion, or action you repeat strengthens certain neural pathways, while others fade from lack of use. This is neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience. It's what allows you to learn, grow, and heal. For people with ADHD and anxiety, this concept is life-changing because it means that the patterns of overstimulation, distraction, and worry aren't fixed traits. They're habits your nervous system has practiced for years, and with the right kind of repetition, new habits can take their place. When your brain lives in a state of chronic tension, the connections between the amygdala and prefrontal cortex get wired for reactivity. The more often you experience stress, the easier it becomes for your brain to trigger that same response. It's like carving a groove in a dirt road. Every time it rains, the water automatically follows the same path. Anxiety and overstimulation are those grooves. The brain has learned to go there automatically, even when it's not helpful. But neuroplasticity also works in the opposite direction. Each time you interrupt that old pattern, when you slow your breath instead of spiraling, or notice your body instead of overthinking, you're creating a new pathway. It may feel small in the moment, but biologically, you're teaching your brain a new route. The more often you take that calmer path, the stronger it gets. Over time, the survival circuits quiet down, and the prefrontal cortex, the part that supports focus, calm, and emotional control, becomes more active and connected. Mindful breathing is one of the simplest ways to activate this process. When you take a slow, deep breath and pay attention to the movement air in your body, you're engaging the sensory networks that live in the present moment. This shifts activity away from the amygdala's alarm and toward the regions that regulate awareness and calm. Every repetition strengthens that shift, making it easier for your brain to return to balance the next time stress hits. Gentle routines are another form of neural training. Predictable, grounding habits, waking up at the same time, having a morning ritual winding down before bed, create safety signals in the nervous system. Each time you repeat these routines, your brain learns that structure equals safety. Over time, this helps regulate dopamine, reducing the craving for constant novelty and allowing motivation to arise from within. It's not about strict schedules, it's about giving your brain patterns it can trust. Gratitude reflection also changes neural wiring. When you take a few seconds to notice something that's going right, a warm drink, a kind word, a moment of quiet, you activate dopamine and serotonin pathways that promote well-being. This simple practice teaches your brain to look for stability instead of threat. The more you practice gratitude, the more naturally your brain begins to spot safety and connection in your environment. It's a way of teaching your threat system that not every moment requires defense. Body-based relaxation is another key to rewiring. When you consciously relax your muscles, stretch, or notice sensations like warmth and pressure, you're sending data to your brain that says, we're safe. That sensory feedback strengthens parasympathetic activation, the calm, restorative side of the nervous system. Repeated over time, your body starts to associate calm with familiarity instead of danger. This rewiring process is slow but profound. It doesn't happen through force or intensity. It happens through gentle repetition. The science behind this is clear. Each time you choose a calming response instead of a reactive one, neurons fire together in a new sequence. Neurons that fire together wire together. That's the foundation of neuroplasticity. You're literally sculpting your brain through practice. It's not about never feeling anxious again. It's about teaching your nervous system new ways to respond when anxiety arises. Eventually, your baseline shifts. Calm starts to feel more natural. Focus starts to come with less effort. These small, consistent actions, mindful breathing, grounding routines, gratitude, gentle movement, might not feel dramatic, but they're incredibly powerful. They regulate dopamine, gradually making it easier to find satisfaction and steady progress instead of constant novelty. They strengthen emotional control by deepening the communication between the prefrontal cortex and amygdala, and they build a sense of safety in your body that supports real, sustainable focus. Over time, the same brain that once felt stuck in chaos begins to stabilize. You notice moments of stillness that don't feel uncomfortable anymore. You catch yourself pausing before reacting, focusing without panic, resting without guilt. That's the visible sign of neuroplasticity at work, your brain learning Through thousands of tiny choices, that calm is not just possible, but safe. Each small repetition becomes a vote for a new identity, one where your nervous system isn't wired for survival, but for balance, presence, and peace. Healing a brain that lives in both ADHD and anxiety isn't about pushing harder or trying to fix yourself. It's about restoring balance. When you understand how your nervous system works, you can begin to shape your environment and habits in ways that make your brain feel safe, focused, and steady again. The truth is, your brain doesn't thrive under pressure, it thrives under safety. And that sense of safety is built, not found, through small, consistent choices each day. Think of it like tending a fire. You don't create warmth by throwing in one giant log and walking away. You create it by adding fuel gradually, keeping the flame steady. Your brain works the same way. The first piece of fuel is sleep. Quality sleep is the single most powerful way to rebalance dopamine, restore emotional regulation, and repair overstressed neural circuits. When you sleep, your brain clears out stress chemicals, consolidates learning, and resets its energy systems. Irregular sleep patterns, staying up late, doom, scrolling, waking at different times, confuse the body's internal clock and disrupt dopamine rhythms. Creating simple sleep hygiene habits like dimming lights an hour before bed. Keeping your room cool and avoiding screens right before sleep can do more for your focus and calm than any supplement or productivity hack. Speaking of screens, managing stimulation is another core part of healing. The ADHD anxiety brain already runs hot. Constant scrolling, notifications, and information overload make that even worse. Every ping or scroll is a micro dose of dopamine, and over time, that trains your brain to expect high-speed novelty all the time. The result? Real life feels dull by comparison, making it harder to focus on anything that doesn't deliver instant reward. Setting limits doesn't mean cutting yourself off completely. It means becoming intentional. Try creating small digital boundaries. No screens for the first 30 minutes after waking, no checking notifications during meals, and one tech-free block each day for deep focus or quiet. This gentle recalibration helps your brain rediscover the slower, deeper forms of reward that build lasting motivation. Daily movement is another reset button for the nervous system. Exercise is often talked about for its physical benefits, but for ADHD and anxiety, it's really about regulation. Movement burns off stress hormones, increases dopamine and serotonin, and strengthens the connection between the body and brain. You don't need a perfect routine. The key is rhythm. 10 minutes of walking, stretching, dancing, or cleaning can reset your brain chemistry. Pairing movement with breathing, like inhaling during a stretch and exhaling as you release, helps reinforce the parasympathetic calm response. Your body learns through repetition that motion can lead to relaxation, not just exhaustion. Moments of mindful rest are equally essential. The ADHD, anxiety brain often mistakes rest for boredom, but rest is actually when healing happens. Mindful rest doesn't mean doing nothing. It means being present with simple things, feeling the warmth of a cup of tea, noticing the sound of your breath, sitting quietly without trying to fix or change anything. These small pauses teach your brain that calm is safe, that stillness doesn't mean danger. Over time, your nervous system begins to trust the quiet again. All of these practices, sleep, screen balance, movement, and mindful rest, work together to retrain your nervous system through experience. They send repeated messages that safety, not urgency, is the baseline. This is what truly rewires the ADHD anxiety brain. When your body feels safe, the amygdala stops overfiring, the prefrontal cortex comes back online, and dopamine stabilizes. Focus starts to emerge naturally. You no longer have to chase stimulation or battle distraction. Your brain begins to regulate itself. This process doesn't happen overnight. It's not about perfect habits or radical change. It's about micro adjustments that compound over time, choosing to go to bed 15 minutes earlier, taking 3 deep breaths before reacting, stretching between tasks, stepping outside for a moment of sunlight. Each small act is like a vote for balance, a way of reminding your nervous system that it can stop running and start resting. Your brain isn't broken. It's adaptable. It learned how to survive in chaos, and now it can learn how to live in calm. Every gentle repetition of safety, every breath, every pause, every night of rest is your brain rewiring itself for peace. Healing doesn't come from fighting your brain. It comes from teaching it patiently what safety feels like. And the more often you do that, the more naturally your focus, calm, and energy return, not through effort, but through trust. Your brain is ready to learn peace again.